Let's get started on the Revell 57 Ford gasser. The instructions on this Revell kit are very nice. They're very easy to read, very well detailed. Something else I like about this, which this is the way I learned what car parts were, how things went together when I was a kid, when I was building models. They did this. I'll give you an example. This here piece here. Now we know what that is, but there's some people that may not. So it's part number 5, and what they've done here is given a list of every single part in the kit. So we'll go to part number 5, oil filler tube, on down the line. It lists every single thing in this kit, all the way down to the front license plate. Next page has everything also. Really cool. So if you don't know what something is, or someone starting out, or some kids starting out and want to know about car parts, they can figure it out. But the instructions are very nice, very easy to read, very detailed. Then you get into the decal layout. And of course, decals, you can do them however you want. And speaking of decals, here's the decal sheet. Very nice decal sheet. You can choose the hypersonic chariot or hair trigger. Just pretty cool. A lot of pinstriping, sponsor decals, more striping, do white walls, license plates. That's a cool little cartoon character there. First thing I like to do before I start any kit is assemble all the halves. I go through all the instructions, look over them real well. It gives me a chance to see what I'm up against, if I'm going to run into any surprises. Helps me on a few things if I want to build this or that first or last. Go in out of order on instructions or follow the instructions, and it gives me a chance to find all my halves to glue together. There's some other halves here. I did him. Got the seat backs on, the differential. Something I noticed on this frame, there's a line that runs all the way down on both sides. I don't know if you can see it or not. But anyway, to make this frame a little bit nicer, I decided I'm going to take that line off. This side's done, and I'll do this side now. I looked everywhere on the internet for one of these frames, for the underneath of it, to see if that line is supposed to be there. Couldn't find anything, so I'm assuming this is a mold line, so I'm going to take it off. Another little thing I like to do, I'm working on getting the engine and tranny cleaned up, but one of the things I like to do is I like to take these bosses off. That way I can sand it more flush. So when this guy goes on, the water pump, we know where he goes. He'll go on there more flush. Right now it rocks, so I got to do a lot of work in there, and it's easier just to take those bossing tabs off. Same with the oil pan. When he goes on, there's a gap in there that's going to be hard to take out. So the best way to take it out is take these bosses out, and then I can sand everything smooth and it'll be nice and flat. Same with right there. Take those bosses off, sand it smooth, it'll be nice and flat, and then everything will go on flat. Working on the headers, getting them cleaned up, got this one cleaned up, and opening up the ends. On step 6, we put in our torsion bars, or these little radius rods. And on one side they're flat, they look really good, but the other side they're kind of molded open. So we're going to fill that up with super glue and baking soda. And what I do is I fill that cavity up with super glue and then pour some baking soda on it. Push it down a little bit. Flatten her out. And just like that, it fills up that cavity. And this will not shrink, unlike filling that cavity with Bondo or something where you'd have to fill it 2 or 3 or 4 times to get the shrinkage down. And we can sand it here in just a few minutes. We've got our body all painted up, and the way I went about doing this is I shot the whole entire body a primer color. I just happen to have this color on hand, so that's why I used it. And then I masked the bottom off a little bit, not much, and wet the top with water, put some salt on it, and painted it this purple color, Purplicious, from Testors, which is a really neat color. Scraped off all the salt, and then reapplied the salt technique again and painted it another coat of the purple. Taped it off, and I didn't worry about taping much off. It's kind of, since it's weathered, you don't have to really worry about being exact. And then I painted the gold color, the Inca Gold from Testors. I love this paint line. It's a very nice paint line. And this is where we are. Now I'm going to start weathering this a little bit and put some decals on and do some more weathering. I took the tape off, and that's what it looks like with the salt underneath it. And what I'll do is I'll take my finger and some sandpaper and kind of softly rub over it over a trash can and get all that salt off. Okay, what I've done is I got all the salt scraped off so it's smooth, and then under some water I took some sandpaper and ran it all around the body, starting to expose some of that primer color. The reason I want to do that right now is because I'm getting ready to run that long decal on there. So it'll show a little bit of that, and then I'm going to try a little experiment with that decal. Once it's good and set after a day or two, I'm going to start doing a little sanding on that decal. See if I can rough it up a little bit. I'm going to make this like an old barn find, something that ran in the 60s, and someone's running it now and has just updated the chassis and engine and keeping the body the way it was. So it's getting there. That's step one. I've got the first decal on. A little tip on putting on a long decal like that is I like to do it in 2 parts. And this one was easy to do in 2 parts because in between the 2 words there's a little bit of a separation. So you can cut it into 2 words, and it also eliminates some clear decal film that could silver. And it also lets you maneuver it the way you want versus trying to maneuver one long decal. You can do it in 2 smaller ones. Just something to help you out. On this decal, and it really didn't need it, I laid some Mark Fit Strong on to help the decal out a little bit, but you don't have to on this one because it laid down beautiful. The decals in this kit are very nice. So I'll let this dry for a good maybe overnight before I start on the other side. And that's what I like to do because I've run into problems in the past where I flip this thing around in an hour, get this side all nice and decaled, flip it back over, and this side is moved or messed up. Just something I learned a long time ago not to do again. So we'll let this thing dry overnight and start on the other side. I've already got those 2 decals cut into 2 pieces. Get you caught up to where I'm at. I got the chassis pan painted black, the back sides of the Interior panels painted black. I like to get all that stuff painted black. That way there's no white bleed through when everything gets put together. Of course, the firewall, both sides painted black. And the frame, I decided to paint the same purple as I did the roof, just to give it a little accent since the frame's separate from the chassis pan. And I'm working on sanding the frame, and I'm going to weather it a bit. So when it's on, you'll have a little bit of accent color. The decals I've been sanding. I've just been taking some sandpaper and rubbing them gently and taking my time and working it and making it look like an old paint job that's worn out. And it's getting there. I'm liking how it's looking. And then when, of course, I put a very thick layer of primer on, so I really wouldn't go through to any white spots of the plastic. And any white spots that I've gone through, I'll go over those. For an example, on the hood, I went through right there, and I'll go over that with another rest color. The underneath is all painted black, so there's no bleed through when everything gets put together. Pieces are done. And the underneath of the chassis I'm slightly weathering. Here's the frame. It started off purple. We're weathering it. And the engine, it's painted Ford red. The only thing I kept chrome are the Edelbrock valve covers, and they do say Edelbrock, which are really nice valve covers. I'm going to wire it and run a fuel line. We got an aftermarket carburetor we're going to use. We're getting painted up. It's hard to match up the color of a carburetor, so I'm trying to do the best I can. We got some various parts that we're getting painted. Parts that would have been replaced. This is kind of like a barn find build. Working on the leaf springs, fan pulleys. That's front end piece. These are front end pieces. These would have been taken apart and cleaned up to race. Here's the headers. They're looking pretty good. Of course, they're opened up, and the ends are faded to black. And the dashboard. And the seats. Added some seat belts. Here's the rear end. And I highlighted the brake line on that rear end. And the body. Body's basically done. I've got a few things to doll up yet. I added all the bare metal foil on the sides and back and front, and I painted all the side glass and rear glass this Tamiya yellow color to give it that really cool drag racing look. And of course our decal was all distressed, which would have been painted on obviously back in the day, but it's coming along. I have to doll that up yet, and I might doll up the stickers a bit. Add door handles. Of course I shaved the emblem. And the headlights, I think I'm going to do purple. And here's what the chassis looks like with the frame. You can't really see it on camera, but the frame is a little bit of a different color. It's rusting a little bit differently. And once everything's together, I'm going to do a dust coat on it like I did on those tractors. So we'll dust it up a little bit, especially when all the new parts get put on. I'll get them dusted and dirtied up just a little bit. I've got the underneath all dusted and dirtied up. I think it's good to go. And for the tires and wheels, I chose some tires out of one of those AMT tire packs for drag cars. I chose some wheels out of one of the AMT tire packs. Added valve stems. And chose these wheels out of an AMT tires pack. And then the tires came from the kit. I'm using the front tires from the kit. Sanded down the oil filter to make it a more modern oil filter. The oil filter that comes with the kit is the original 1957 oil filter. So I made him a whole lot smaller, sanded him down, and then put a decal on to make it look like a new oil filter that you just pulled out of the box and put on. Got the frame mounted to the chassis pan. We're getting there. And the tack mounted on the dash with a little wire run. We decided to put the battery in the back, gets it out of the engine compartment, get the tires and wheels added, grill, front gas tank, fuel line, and we can get the body mounted. We have the 57 Ford wagon gasser finished. Used different tires and wheels, added valve stems, distressed the hypersonic chariot decal going across, make it look like an old barn find hot rod, added sponsored decals on the glass, tinted the glass yellow. We did a poor man's French on this car. There's extenders that add on to the back here, and we did not put them on, and they just added into tail lights, and it looks like a Frenched tail light. We did the same with the front. There's extensions that go on the front of the headlights, and we didn't put those on either. Make it look like a Frenched headlight. And also on the headlights, we colored them purple to match the top. And the side trim is we took the original bar and replaced it with an aluminum push bar, and then that enabled us to mount the little fuel tank, the aluminum moon fuel tank, to the side. That's not an aluminum tank, although it's painted aluminum color and buffed, but I liked it mounted offset over to the side better than in the center on how the kit comes. There's a view from that side, and a view from the back. This was a fun build. You can see the roof is distressed. Used the salt technique on that, and actually the whole entire body is distressed with just basically rub the paint down to the primer. There are no rust holes in this body, but there's a little bit of a surface rust on the outside of the body. And we were able to wire up the engine. Added a different carburetor, which I think added a lot of realism to this build. And we added a fuel line from the moon tank to the fuel pump on the block. The underneath is weathered slightly. Started off with a purple frame, so the frame is a different color than the chassis pan. This was a fun build. Of course, it's hard to get the interior on these, but there's the two-tone interior and the tack. The tack's wired, and I even added seat belts. I really enjoyed building this 57 wagon gasser. I like gassers a lot, and I need to get back into building more gassers. So I hope you like this. If you liked it, give it a big thumbs up. We'll see you in the next video.